As Cornwall slips into misty nights and autumn winds, old legends awaken. Join us this spooky season to explore 13 haunted places where history lingers and shadows refuse to fade. Wesley's cottage. As autumn deepens and Cornwall's winds sharpen, the quiet hamlet of Altarnan feels older than time. At its heart stands Wesley's cottage, a modest granite house where John Wesley, founder of Methodism, once stayed during his many preaching journeys across the West Country. By day, it is a place of history, its low beams and small rooms filled with the scent of wood smoke and the creak of centuries. But when evening falls and the lanes grow silent, visitors speak of a presence that seems to stir as naturally as the wind outside. Local lore tells that Wesley's devotion bound him to this house even after death. People entering the cottage at dusk have felt a sudden hush descend, as if unseen eyes were watching. Guides have spoken of footsteps pacing the upper floor when no one is there. In the little prayer room, where Wesley is said to have prepared his sermons, candles sometimes flicker without a draught, and the air turns strangely cold, the temperature dropping as if an invisible door had opened. Several caretakers over the years have reported uncanny moments. One recalled locking up for the night when the sound of slow, deliberate steps came from the wooden stair. Expecting a late visitor, they turned to greet no one. Others describe hearing a faint murmur, a rhythm of words that could be prayer or preaching carried on the still air. More than once, guests have felt the soft brush of a sleeve, as if someone passed by on a narrow landing. Legends suggest Wesley returns not in anger, but in quiet guardianship, a preacher still keeping vigil over the cottage and the faithful who come to remember him. Some locals believe the spirit draws near on nights of heavy rain, when the moors outside vanish in mist, and the boundary between past and present thins. Whether spirit or story, Wesley's cottage remains a place where the centuries refuse to sleep. The crack of old timbers and the faint echo of a sermon that may never have ended invite visitors to wonder if devotion this deep can truly fade. From these shadowed rooms, our journey through Cornwall's haunted heart begins where faith and mystery intertwine, and the past still breathes in the dark. Tintagel Castle, perched on a wild headland where waves crash endlessly against black rock, Tintagel Castle feels almost outside of time. Steep paths wind up from the sea, and the roar of the Atlantic wraps the ruins in a constant, lonely thunder. By daylight, it is a sight of breathtaking beauty and legend linked for centuries to the story of King Arthur. Yet as dusk falls and the salt mist thickens, the fortress seems to wake in a different way, as if the old tales are not entirely past. Locals speak of a nightly figure who appears when the night is at its darkest. Cloaked and armored, he moves along the broken walls with a steady tread, pausing to look out over the sea. Some say he is a guardian of Arthurian memory, a sentinel who will not abandon the place where myth and history blur. Others think he may be a forgotten warrior bound by unfinished vows to defend the castle even after death. Visitors exploring the ruins after hours have felt an abrupt stillness, as though the wind itself were listening. One late traveler described climbing the narrow bridge when he heard a metallic clink that matched his own footsteps but came from behind. Turning quickly, he caught sight of a tall figure outlined against the moonlit fog. The shape seemed solid for a heartbeat before gliding into shadow and dissolving into the stone. There are tales of faint trumpet calls carried across the cliffs and of a low voice reciting ancient words that cannot quite be understood. Some locals say that on stormy winter nights, a horse's neigh drifts from the hidden caves below where sea spray meets the dark. Whether night or legend, the presence feels woven into the very rock, as if the land remembers its own stories. Standing among Tintagel's shattered archways, one senses a strange union of history and myth. The crash of the tide becomes a drumbeat from another age, and the empty windows seem to watch the horizon for a ship that will never come. Perhaps it is only the mind shaping mystery from sound and mist, or perhaps the old knight keeps his eternal patrol waiting for a call that no longer comes. Our path through Cornwall's haunted coast moves on, but the echo of armor and the gleam of moonlight on stone linger long after the climb is done. Camelot Castle Hotel. On the high cliffs of Tintagel, where Atlantic winds batter the Cornish coast, stands the grand Camelot Castle Hotel. Built in the late 19th century to capture the romance of King Arthur's realm, it commands sweeping views of sea and sky. By day, it gleams with the elegance of a Victorian retreat. But when night gathers and the ocean fog drifts inland, the hotel seems to slip into another time, carrying with it whispers of guests who may never have left. Local tradition speaks of three spirits that make their presence known within these walls. One is said to be a former employee who died some 70 years ago, still keeping an unseen watch over the halls he once tended. Others describe the fleeting outline of a woman in Edwardian dress gliding past the grand staircase without a sound. A third presence is less defined, felt only as sudden chills in long corridors and the faint scent of candle wax and old cigars. Several visitors have shared unsettling moments that echo these legends. A couple walking a quiet hallway after midnight reported hearing a door open and close behind them, only to find every room locked and silent. In one of the upper suites, a guest awoke to the soft clink of a glass on the bedside table, though no one else was in the room. Staff preparing for early breakfast have spoken of faint footsteps pacing just out of view and of a distant tuneful humming that ceases the moment they listen closely. The grand dining room seems to hold its own memories. Some nights, a sudden draft sweeps through, despite closed windows, carrying a hint of sea spray and something older, as though a forgotten celebration was still unfolding. In the library, books have been discovered fallen open on pages describing Arthurian battles or long journeys home, as if chosen by an invisible hand. Whether these events are the lingering devotion of a faithful worker, echoes of long-gone holidaymakers, or simply the castle's romantic legend shaping every creak and whisper, the effect is unmistakable. Camelot Castle Hotel stands as a meeting point of myth and memory, where the line between history and haunting is thin as sea mist. As we leave the glow of its tall windows and the sound of waves beneath, the sense of quiet watchfulness lingers. It is as though the past here is not fully past, and that some guests, bound by love of the place or stories too strong to fade, still walk its elegant halls while the modern world sleeps. The Napoleon Inn. In the heart of Boscastle stands the Napoleon Inn, a 16th century stone pub whose low beams and flickering lamps still draw travelers from the stormy Cornish coast. By day, it offers the comfort of hearty meals and laughter. By night, it becomes a stage for ghost stories that have circulated for centuries. The most famous spirit here is known as the Plucker. Local legend holds that he delights in moving objects and creating sudden sounds. Staff speak of pictures sliding off walls and chairs scraping across wooden floors when no one is near. More than one visitor has felt a gentle tug on clothing or heard a low, playful chuckle vanish into silence. When the doors are locked for the night, tables are sometimes found shifted by morning, as if an unseen hand has been at work. Yet the Plucker is only part of the tale. Patrons seated by the bar have reported a figure in old-fashioned clothes quietly smoking a pipe, the scent of tobacco drifting through the room. When approached, he fades like mist. Even more striking is the apparition of a Napoleonic soldier. Dressed in a dark military coat with brass buttons, he is said to walk steadily across the floor and pass through a wall where a doorway once stood. Some late visitors claim to hear the sharp tap of boots echoing in empty corridors. Eyewitness moments add weight to the lore. One evening, a couple felt a sudden cold current sweep through the snug, carrying with it the unmistakable aroma of pipe smoke, though no one nearby was smoking. Another guest described a firm nudge on the shoulder and the sense of someone leaning close before the room returned to stillness. Whether the plucker was once a jovial patron, reluctant to leave, or a former innkeeper still tending his business, his spirit seems more mischievous than malevolent. The Napoleon Inn remains a place where the past lingers like a friendly regular who cannot quite say goodbye. Outside, the wind lashes the harbour walls, and the inn's doorway glows against the dark. Step away, and the echoes of unseen footsteps and faint tobacco scent seem to follow, as if inviting you back for another round in a house where history and haunting share the same warm fire. Dolcoath Mine. Near Camborne lies Dolcoath Mine, once known as the richest copper mine in Cornwall, and a vast warren of shafts and tunnels stretching far beneath the earth. Today the workings are silent, the heavy clank of machinery long gone, yet many say the mine's deepest stories never truly closed with its gates. After dusk, the surrounding lanes grow unnervingly quiet, and even locals speak of a presence that rides the old paths. The most enduring legend tells of a small horseman astride a black mount. One evening over a century ago, a tired miner was heading towards the blacksmith's shop at Bottom Hill after his shift. As he neared the steps, he heard a loud clatter behind him, like hooves striking stone. Turning, he saw a strange sight, a figure no taller than a child, cloaked in darkness, riding a perfectly proportioned black horse. Both rider and animal seemed oddly weightless, their outlines shimmering as if lit from within. The miner watched in stunned silence as the phantom horseman passed by without a sound and guided the black horse straight up the narrow stone steps, vanishing into the night air. No prints marked the path. The next day the steps were empty and cold, with no sign of the mysterious visitor. Word of the sighting spread quickly, and soon others claimed similar glimpses, a fleeting silhouette at twilight, the faint ring of hooves on nights when the wind falls still. Those who have walked the route in recent years report sudden chills and an uncanny feeling of being watched. A few late-night wanderers describe hearing the distant echo of hooves when no horse is near. Some speak of an earthy smell rising from the ground like damp rock freshly split moments before the air turns icy. Whether the phantom is the restless soul of a miner lost in a shaft, collapse a spirit guide of Cornish folklore, or simply the imagination stirred by fog and moonlight, the story endures. Dolcoath Mine remains a place where the boundaries between the living and the long-departed seem thin. Stand alone on the quiet path as mist creeps from the valley, and it is easy to believe that at any moment the black horse and its strange rider might emerge once again, climbing the old stone steps and vanishing back into the darkness from which they came. Dead Man's Hut. On the rugged north coast of Cornwall, where waves crash hard against Portreath's harbour wall, stands a small, weather-worn structure known as Dead Man's Hut. Built centuries ago as both a lookout and a mortuary for those lost at sea, it sits on the cliff edge like a solitary sentinel. Fishermen once stored recovered bodies here until the tide allowed a proper burial, and even now The stones seem to hold that history in their salt-stained pores. As dusk falls, the hut's outline grows stark against the fading sky. Locals say that when the wind drops and the sea stills faint, movements can be glimpsed inside the doorway, the suggestion of figures pacing slowly in the gloom. Some describe shadowy shapes swaying as though weighed down by waterlogged clothes. Others speak of a cold, briny smell that rises suddenly sharper than the natural sea air, followed by the muffled sound of oars or the creak of an unseen boat rope straining against a cleat. One late-night walker recounted standing by the harbour entrance when the air abruptly turned icy. Through the half-open door, he saw a dark mass shifting gently as if several people were gathered within. When he stepped closer, the hut was empty, the floor dry and bare. The next morning, only a faint ring of moisture marked the spot. Fishermen who berth nearby tell of sudden splashes with no cause and of hearing low voices calling from the water, their words lost in the surf. Folklore claims these are the spirits of drowned sailors who never received the final rites of burial at sea. Some legends even suggest that on storm anniversaries, the dead return to reclaim their place within the hut, waiting silently for a blessing that never came. The name Dead Man's Hut itself feels less like a title than a quiet warning. This is a house for those who never made it home. Whether spirits or sea mist illusions, the atmosphere is undeniable. As the tide rises and moonlight glints on the restless Atlantic, the hut stands dark and solitary, its small doorway seeming deeper than its size should allow. Step too near, and you may feel the sudden chill of unseen company, a reminder that the ocean keeps its own account, and that some who are lost to its depths are never truly gone. The Castle Inn. In the winding heart of St Ives stands the Castle Inn, a centuries-old pub whose thick stone walls and timbered ceilings have witnessed countless tides of visitors. By day, its snug rooms and friendly chatter feel warm and inviting. But when the last glass is set down and the lamps are lowered, the atmosphere changes, as if something unseen is ready to stir. The most famous presence here is Maud, said to have been a working woman from the early 20th century who kept a small room at the back of the inn. Long after her death, staff and guests speak of her spirit moving through the corridors. Doors open and close on their own barrels, shift in the cellar, and electrical fittings flicker as though touched by invisible hands. More than one visitor has returned from the restroom to find the hand dryers whirring without cause, their echoes filling the silence like soft mechanical laughter. Some witnesses describe a faint scent of old tobacco or a sudden drop in temperature that makes the hair rise on the neck. A night manager once entered the rear hallway to find a heavy door swinging gently, though every window was locked and no draft could be found. At times, quiet footfalls cross the upstairs rooms when no one is lodged there, and a soft female sigh has been caught on recording equipment left overnight. Patrons speak of glimpsing a figure at the edge of the bar, a woman with dark hair and a shawl who vanishes if approached. Others claim that late on calm evenings, a ripple of sound, half laughter, half weeping, drifts from the corner once known as Maud's. The locals regard these happenings with a mixture of affection and awe, calling her a watchful spirit rather than a fearful one. Whether she lingers out of habit, unfinished business, or a fondness for the lively rooms she once called home, Maud's presence seems woven into the inn itself. Visitors often leave with the sense of having been quietly observed, as if she approves of their company and the life still filling the old house. Step outside into the narrow St Ives street, and the night feels suddenly deeper, the distant sea louder. Behind you, the Castle Inn settles into darkness, yet you cannot shake the feeling of a figure leaning in a doorway, smiling faintly as she keeps her eternal watch over the place she never truly left. Wooten's Inn, at the center of Tintagel, where legends of King Arthur swirl like sea mist, stands Wooten's Inn, a sturdy old inn of stone and slate. By daylight, it offers comfort to travelers and locals alike. Yet as the evening deepens and the last drinkers drift away, a quieter presence begins to stir in the upper rooms. The inn's most whispered story concerns a small boy said to haunt room 3. Guests speak of waking in the half-light of early morning to hear the faint padding of tiny feet along the corridor. Dogs brought to stay often stiffen, suddenly hackles, raised, and bark at a closed door as though sensing someone unseen. One visiting couple described hearing the gentle creak of floorboards and the sound of soft breathing just beyond their bed, only to find the room empty when they switched on the lamp. Locals say the boy might have been the child of a traveler lost to a sudden coastal storm or a young stable hand who once worked nearby. No records confirm his name, but sightings are remarkably consistent. A slight figure with dark, old-fashioned clothes and eyes that seem sad rather than menacing. In the bar below, staff tell of faint laughter drifting down the stairwell long after closing time. A landlord's dog once refused to set foot on the landing for weeks, trembling at the base of the stairs each evening. Footsteps are not the only unexplained events. Some guests have felt the corner of their duvet lift gently as if a small hand were tucking them in. Others report a sudden chill like the passing of a cold draft even on still summer nights. There are even tales of a childlike giggle that fades just as quickly as it begins. Despite these uneasy moments, few speak of fear. Instead, there is a quiet poignancy to the boy's presence, as though he lingers not to harm, but simply because the warmth of the inn feels like home. Many leave a small toy or coin on the mantel in room 3, a gesture of kindness to a spirit who has not grown beyond his final evening. Outside, Tintagel sleeps beneath the whisper of Atlantic winds, but within Wooten's Inn, the story of the silent boy continues. Visitors who stay the night often depart with the same thought that somewhere in the stillness, a lonely child's spirit is waiting forever, listening for footsteps that will never quite reach his door. The Three Pilchards. In the narrow lanes of Polperro stands the Three Pilchards, a centuries-old inn, built of weather-darkened stone and heavy timbers. By day, it is bright with conversation and the scent of fresh seafood from the harbour. But when night draws in and the tide sighs against the quay, the building seems to exhale an older, darker story. Legends here speak of more than one restless soul. Upstairs, visitors have glimpsed an elderly woman moving quietly from room to room, her outline faint against the lamplight. Some say she was once the keeper of the house, still checking that shutters are drawn against winter gales. Others tell of a long-gone family whose faint laughter and soft footfalls still drift through the upper hallways as though supper were about to be served. Yet the most chilling tale comes from the second floor, where the echoes of tragedy are hardest to ignore. Centuries ago, a brutal quarrel between a husband and wife ended in murder. Neighbors rushed to the sound of a violent struggle and the anguished cries of the woman inside. Today, guests sometimes wake to muffled shouts and the sharp crash of furniture in an empty room. A few claim to have heard a sudden scream cut short, leaving only silence and the slow creak of settling timbers. On still nights, staff have smelled wood smoke where no fire burns and found doors unlatched that had been firmly secured. Beer barrels shift without a hand upon them, and glasses tremble on their shelves as if stirred by an unseen quarrel. One fisherman recalled standing by the stairwell when a gust of cold air pressed past him, followed by what he swore was the faint sob of a woman weeping. Though frightening, these occurrences are said to carry a strange rhythm, as if the house itself replays the final moments again and again. Locals sometimes leave a sprig of wildflowers on the windowsill of the haunted floor, a quiet offering to soothe a spirit caught in an endless loop of sorrow. When the harbour sleeps and the moon hangs low over Polperro, the Three Pilchards keeps its vigil. From the street below, it looks simply like a welcoming inn. Yet those who linger after midnight speak of a deeper presence, a house where joy and tragedy have folded together, and where a single violent night refuses to fade into silence. The White House, high on the rugged coast near St Ives, stands the White House of Zenor, known to locals as the Old Vicarage. From the outside, it is strikingly peaceful, its pale walls catching the salt breeze, and its windows gleaming when the Atlantic sun breaks through the mist. Yet as darkness settles over the moor and the distant surf grows louder, the house seems to hold a presence that no passing century has quietened. Stories center on a former rector remembered less for kindness than for a stern and unbending temper. Parish records speak of a man devoted to his duties but feared for his sharp tongue and quick discipline. Though long dead, his reputation lingers like a shadow, and many believe he has never truly left the house he ruled with such iron will. Guests who have stayed overnight describe a tension that grows after dusk. In the upper hallway, sudden cold spots appear without cause, and doors that were firmly latched at bedtime are found ajar by morning. In the bathroom, where his presence is said to be strongest, faint footsteps sometimes cross the tiled floor when the house is empty. A caretaker once recounted how a mirror fogged over from within on a winter night when no heating was on, as though someone had breathed heavily against the glass. Others speak of the subtle brush of cloth in the dark, of distant murmurs that stop abruptly when approached. Dogs brought into the house often refuse to enter the upper landing, standing rigid with ears back as though they sense an invisible barrier. On stormy evenings, neighbors claim to see a dim figure framed in an upstairs window, motionless and watching only to vanish when the light is shone inside. Local legend holds that the rector's spirit remains bound by a restless pride, unwilling to yield even in death. Some suggest he still walks the vicarage to ensure that order is kept, a ghostly custodian who will not surrender his post. Others believe he lingers out of remorse, replaying old arguments and unresolved duties in a silence that the living cannot break. Whether stern guardian or penitent soul, the White House carries an atmosphere impossible to dismiss. To step inside at night is to feel history pressing close, as if the past itself were pacing the floorboards. Here in Zenor, faith and authority have left a trace far stronger than stone, a presence that endures long after the final sermon has faded into the roar of the Cornish sea. The Wig and Pen. In the winding streets of Truro stands the Wig and Pen, a public house with a long memory and walls darkened by centuries of laughter, argument, and stormy Cornish nights. By day, it hums with conversation and the clink of glasses. Yet when the crowd thins and the lights are low, something older seems to wake beneath its timbered floors. One of the most enduring tales centers on the cellar. Staff speak of a night when a worker went down to check supplies, only to find the heavy door swing shut and refuse to open, though it was never locked. She felt the air grow sharply cold and sensed a quiet presence just out of sight. Moments later, the door opened as easily as if nothing had happened. Others have felt a sudden gust at their backs, or heard the faint rattle of keys deep in the empty space. Objects shift without warning. Beer taps flow, though no hand touches them. A stereo, left off, will crackle to life with a burst of music, then fall silent when footsteps approach. Bottles have been found neatly rearranged or placed in odd corners, as if by unseen bar staff still carrying out their nightly duties long after closing time. The most poignant figure is said to be a fair-haired girl, thought by many to be the spirit of Claire Jane Smith, who was struck by a runaway horse outside in the late 19th century and died soon after she was carried inside. Gentle and fleeting, her presence is marked by a cool brush across the skin or the brief outline of a young woman near the window where she once gazed at the street. Some evenings, a soft sigh or a quiet weeping drifts through the bar before fading into silence. Patrons occasionally glimpse a second more shadowed presence, a tall man in a dark coat who lingers near the back hallway. He is never heard to speak, only to watch vanishing if approached. Whether guardian or simple echo of the past, he adds a subtle tension to the cellar's mysteries. Those who close the pub at night often pause before locking the final door, sensing eyes upon them from the stairwell. While nothing here has ever meant harm, the Wigan Pen carries an air of unfinished business, as if the building itself refuses to let its stories end. In Truro's quiet hours, when the city streets are empty, this old house remains alive, with echoes, its restless spirits keeping their own patient watch. Harbour View House, perched above the harbour at St Ives Harbour View House, holds a commanding view of the sea. Its white facade catches every shift of light off the Atlantic, giving the impression of calm. Yet those who stay overnight soon discover a deeper presence that defies the cheerful seaside air. When this building was known as the Regent Hotel in the 19th century, stories of strange happenings began to take root. During times of repair or renovation, activity seems to quicken. Workers speak of tools disappearing and doors that open to empty landings. Knocking sounds echo along upper corridors when no one is near, and heavy furniture is found moved despite its weight. A stout oak table once shifted overnight from the center of a room to rest tight against a wall, a feat two men later struggled to repeat. Guests have reported sudden chills as though someone passed unseen. In room 1, a soft shape like a mist has been glimpsed at the foot of the bed. More striking is the vision of a smiling man, dressed in a long military frock coat, who has been seen at the bottom of the main staircase, his outline fading when approached. On the top floor, leading to the roof space, a kindly maid in a black skirt has occasionally appeared, her presence calm and almost welcoming, as if she still tends to her duties long after her earthly shift ended. There are darker tales too. A short, elderly man in 19th century attire has been spotted lingering near doorways and along the stairwells, particularly when building work stirs the house. Some believe he once served here and now returns to ensure that the order he knew remains intact. Soft knocks on doors in the deep night, faint footsteps above empty rooms, and the occasional distant laughter all add to the sense of an unseen household carrying on as before. What sets Harbour View House apart is the variety of its phantoms. They are not tied to a single tragedy, but seem woven through the fabric of the building itself. Visitors often describe a curious feeling of being gently watched rather than threatened, as if past residents still wish to share their beloved view of the Cornish sea. Whether glimpsed in the quiet of dawn or felt in the hush of midnight, the echoes of this house linger like the tide, never fully gone, always ready to return. The Falmouth Hotel Standing above Castle Beach with sweeping views of Falmouth Bay, the Falmouth Hotel has welcomed travelers since Victorian times. Its grand stone corridors and sea salt air speak of elegance and leisure, but once night settles over the bay, the tone changes. Beneath the polished dining rooms lies a cellar where a single tragedy has shaped more than a century of whispers. In the late 19th century, the hotel brewed its own beer in deep stone chambers. One evening, a brewery worker is said to have lost his life in a sudden accident, the details never fully told. The brewing ceased long ago. The space turned into a quiet snooker room, yet staff still sense the worker's presence. After closing time, a soft metallic clink is sometimes heard, or the faint roll of a ball across bare boards when the tables stand empty. Housekeepers report cold drafts carrying a sharp scent of hops, as if the day's brewing continues unseen. A low, rhythmic knock has echoed along the corridor to the old cellar, stopping the instant a door is opened. Guests crossing the hall have caught quick-moving shadows at the edge of vision, and once a heavy chair scraped across the floor with no hand to move it. There is nothing violent here, no sudden terror. Instead, the haunting works. Quietly, a brief scent, a subtle shift of light, a sound half remembered. Each moment suggests that the worker's final duty never ended, that some part of his routine remains stitched into the fabric of the hotel. By day, the Falmouth Hotel is a place of light-filled windows and broad sea views. But for those who pause near the old cellar after dark, the memory of a life cut short lingers. It is a gentle but persistent presence, a reminder that history never truly leaves even the most gracious of seaside retreats. Which Cornwall haunting stayed with you longest? Share your thoughts, like, and subscribe to Creepy Experience for more journeys into Britain's shadowed past.